There was one particular brother, Birdie Marr as we called him, and this guy would not give me an inch. He was on my case for a whole year in 6th class. My last year between those walls and shit happens. I seriously can't remember one single day in that class where I didn't get crap from him. He obviously disliked me for some reason. My height maybe, as he was quite small. My lack of interest in what he had to say, although I never ignored him intentionally. I remember him beating Willie O'Leary more often than not, on the legs with a length of dowel because he was wearing wet Wellingtons in the classroom as he didn't have any socks. It always seemed to be that they were looking for any reason to dole out some of their frustrations on the first easy target that he found. Now, Willie lived in Mary Nolan's in a cottage about a mile out the road, and he was always up early, as he would have had to work. He'd have work to do before he came to school, like getting water from the stream, feeding pigs, chickens, digging out a few spuds for dinner, etc. And then he would trot in the road in his wellies every morning, winter and summer. I don't even remember him having a coat. Mary Nolan was living in the cottage with a guy called Meekoff. He was Dutch, and there was maybe 5 or 6 children who had Dutch names. The only one I remember was Freddie, and all the boys had these mad haircuts with their heads shaven and just one big fringe. They all moved to Holland in the early 70s and sold the house to Jimmy Hayes, a brother of Kathleen Hayes, married to Paddy the Hack Dumphy. And Jimmy died some years ago, but his wife is still there, although the house has changed since then. Arriving at that school gate on a dreary winter's morning and having to stand in the yard wearing a wet duffel coat, probably handed down from one of my older brothers, whilst the tricolour was raised by one of the few teachers' pets, and listened to a very bad recording of the national anthem from a reel-to-reel tape machine, probably by the Garda band, then off in single file through the toilets and into the sticky warm smell of wet coats looming in the cold air inside and outside the cloakroom. I can still get that smell if I think enough about it these days, and whoever designed duffel coats have a lot to answer for. They weren't even related to a coat, never mind having behave like one. There were eight places where the wind and rain got in. When it got wet, it soaked straight through immediately, which meant your school jumper and shirt were damp until you warmed up in the classroom enough to dry them with body heat, and to top it off, wet short wool trousers and wet socks and shoes, and finally, some over-eager teacher's pet swinging a wooden-handled brass bell as loud as possible in the hope that he would get the job on a permanent basis, set me right up for what seemed like endless hours of mindless information based on subjects of no interest whatsoever to me and many of my classmates. There seemed to be 3 sections in classes back then: 10% brain boxes, 70% who knew enough about each subject to get by, and the other 20% were thick. All of these are based on Christian Brothers' opinions, of course, and certainly wouldn't reflect reality, so I don't mind admitting to being thick. The thoughts of leaving that playground at 9 o'clock in the morning, going into a classroom to say prayers to a statue of the Blessed Virgin which stood on a plinth about 8 feet high and sealed in a glass dome was enough to hope some mad fucking shit happened, like a busted mental patient jumping over the mental wall into the school, or even Mocky Dower checking for someone on the duck. Any few minutes reprieve would do, even to dull a colour on the desk using your arms as a headdress, but no such luck. Jesus, here we go. Okay, yeah. History, then maybe out with the arithmetic book and start this long division nonsense, and why? Fuck knows. I was just about getting the hang of doing sums to the point where I was delighted to be able to get a sum right, and then algebra turned up. Now, what was all that about? All of a sudden, x equals 2 and y equals 3 for some reason, and I eventually got it after a couple of weeks. But then x2 plus y3 equals 47 or something. That was the end of that. I couldn't get a handle on it after that. History was a right pain in the arse. Oliver Cromwell this, the Duke of Wellington that, and Cuchulainn whacking slitters from Miles the other. That's all very well. What's going on now is what I was interested in, and that was all going on up on the knock and out the fields. Geography enlightened me to the whereabouts of Leitrim at Lone, and as far as the McGillicuddy Reeks. I used to cringe for some reason at the very mention of those mountains, as all I could see in my mind was black, bleak and wet sheer cliff faces. Right? School days, the best days of your life. I'm certainly not the first person to say that they were not, and I don't mind putting it in print either. The only thing I can say that was good about it was meeting new friends, discovering the Irish language and time to go home. Other than that, it really got in my way. Now, I'm sure there are those who will agree and those who will disagree, and that's fine. It just wasn't for me. Long days sitting in a dreary classroom with high ceilings and the echo of a distant voice interfering with the pictures in my head of open fields, bogs, streams full of red gills. As a matter of fact, I held a record with 72 fish and Mary Nolans in one day, but I did use a jute sack and not the standard biscuit tin with holes punched through the bottom from the inside, so that when you're taking the fish out to put them in the jar, you didn't have their fingertips ripped open on the sharp metal punched out with a 3-inch wire nail. Stick insects, a rare newt in my sights if I'm lucky, and plenty of ditches to check for nests, rabbit burrows, fox trails and fucking horseflies. Next came the slap on the back of the head from a Christian brother with nothing else to do but ensure I couldn't hear another word he said for the rest of the day. They always seemed to be able to make contact with me with the back of their hands into the centre of my head and the tips of their fingers on the ear for maximum G-force. Others pinched your arm and twisted while they were doing it. A favourite one was to catch you by whatever sideburns you had and then lift you up out of the desk where you had to stand on your tippy toes to ease the pain and crush your toes in the process. It would have been bearable if I had been asked, and not in a sarcastic way, what exactly was so interesting out the window that got my attention, with total disregard on a regular basis for the inevitable consequences. All right?